you're listening to She Shield, your one-stop shop for all things personal safety. I'm your host, Sofia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. Today, we have Christun with the Healthy Buffalo. Christun and I met at Extreme Close Quarter Concepts, or ECQC, with Shivworks Craig Douglas a few months ago. We have since stayed in touch and also attended Knife Control Concepts with Aaron Jannetti and Eli Knight. Christun has a true drive to help women become a tool for their own safety. I would love, Christun, for you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the pod.
Hi, I am Christun Erwin, and I run Healthy Buffalo Self-Defense. And I'm pretty excited to be here.
I'm so excited you're here. This is definitely a long time coming. I've been really excited to get you on. I think that's what that means, right? Like, a long time coming means you're excited to get someone on. I mean it in the best way. Okay. I've been really excited about this, in other words. I would love for you to tell the listeners how Healthy Buffalo came about and where your martial arts journey started and what led to your business eventually. Does that make any sense?
Yep, makes a lot of sense. So I started out in karate. So I have a second-degree black belt in karate, and I taught it for a couple of years. And it was kind of one of those things where it was a one-size-fits-all. And I remember looking into it, and I was like, I don't really know if this is going to work in an actual fight. I had started research a little bit about freeze responses and things like this, and I knew I wanted to do a women's self-defense sort of thing. I didn't quite know what it looked like at the time. And so I was starting to branch out. I was in a very traditional one where it was kind of like you can't cross-train. And so I was kind of pushing out a little bit. So we started traveling in 2019, and I wanted to look into Muay Thai. That was one of the things that I was interested in. And so I ended up in Jacksonville, Florida at Jacksonville Muay Thai. And Giles, who's the owner there, we got to chat, and I did a couple private sessions with him. And he recommended the book Dead or Alive by Jeff Thompson. And so I went home and totally just sucked myself right into that book. And it was everything that I had been thinking about, and it was just all there. It's a really excellent book. Same time, I was like, you know what? I have a second-degree black belt, but I don't feel like a badass. And I was like, when am I going to feel like a badass? The answer is you're never going to, by the way. So that sucks. So no Jane Wick here. So I remember thinking I was like, okay, well, I want to test this out. I really want to see. So I started looking up civilian SEER courses, and really, really glad that didn't work out. But what pulled up was Craig Douglas's Shivworks, ECQC. And so the biggest thing, back it up a little bit, I was a foster mom for 10 years. And so we fostered over 36 kids. And then we also adopted 9. So yeah, I have hella kids in my house. And
That's incredible.
Anyway, I saw a lot of boundary issues with teen girls. We had a lot of teen girls throughout our home, and in and out, and there was a lot of boundary issues of just even being able to discertain where to set parameters at in terms of just even is this okay, space and stuff like that. And
right.
So that was something that I had noticed that was really starting, because I was so looked into the ECQC. I called Craig, and I was like, what do I need to know in order to take this course? And he was like, you just need to be able to pull a gun from concealment safely. And I was like, I got this. I didn't have that. It was bad. It's so funny because everybody's like, how did you start your gun journey, your firearms journey? And I was just like, most people start standing like isosceles, aiming at a paper target. I started out with thumb, pectoral, index, fighting on the ground with a SIM gun. That. That's how, I had redneck range experience before, where your dad just gives you a gun and then you you fire it and then you just kind of hand it back, So I had a Taurus 380 in a belly band. And I maybe put 20 rounds through it. That's it. I went out and I was like, okay, well, I can at least figure out how to be mildly safe. And so showed up in this cold field in like the middle of Nowheresville, South Kansas City, and was one of two women there. And so it was basically like ruining deer camp for all these dudes. Like they were like, it was very entertaining. And proceeded to get schooled on everything. So it was such an eye-opening experience. But his muck portion, which is managing unknown contacts, is the first 4 hours that he does for every course. And that was the part that blew my mind, because he was basically saying everything that I had like in my head, but I'm not organized. And it's like, 15 browsers open, and he had it was just science. It was beautiful. It was art. And how he taught it. And like, it was everything that I was wanting to try and teach. I mean, he was geared more towards, it is more of a man thing, or more towards, he teaches law enforcement and military and all that fun stuff. But everything that he was saying in terms of how to determine whether someone has good intention or bad intention, and like setting the stopping the encroachment of a person and stuff like that, and how to speak, like making sure that you practice what you're saying and stuff. And so that was just it, blew my mind. Went home and then ended up at TCB, which is an MMA gym here. So they do Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu as well. And then I take Jiu-Jitsu when I can, and then when I'm home at Toss Academy here in Bentonville. And it's just been just a wild ride, and just started kind of honing in my curriculum and what I want to teach and how I want to do it. And I'm an instructor under Janetti's Knife Control Concepts, and loved that. That was like glue. We can go into that later if you want to do that, or however you want to do it. So I just have a real passion for it. I have 6 daughters, so definitely want them safe.
Yeah. As someone who is a female and has 2 sisters, I absolutely love what you said. It's absolutely true. It's very hard to set boundaries. It's not something that is kind of intuitive. I feel like you can't really do it, to your best ability without practice. And when I showed up to ECQC and met you, you were, of course, Craig's partner when he was showing the class, because you were very experienced with it. I saw this being taught, and I thought, this isn't like too crazy. But then I went outside with you all, and I just froze, like having to basically say no to someone, and then also give verbal commands to step back and have them stop encroaching on your space was not as easy as I thought it would be. So I was definitely impressed with that. And I love that you teach that. So what are some ways you teach women to essentially muck and defend their boundaries?
So one of the things that's really important, and I think this is what started it out, is I was looking into what like exact freeze responses there are. And a hospital in Stockholm, Sweden did a study, and they had over like almost 300 women that came in that were reported rapes. And what they had is 70% of these women that came in reported what's called tonic immobility, and they literally froze. They could not respond. Their body just didn't respond. So when you combine that, so 70% of 300 women in an attack freeze, okay? First of all, you're looking at, that's reported. So let's just say that, you froze, and in the aftermath, you're sitting here going, oh my gosh, I didn't fight back, and then also, so then are you really, that's just what's reported. So if you go into a police station and you're going to give a report, right? And they're going to be like, oh, did you fight back? And if you're like, well, I couldn't, I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, so right. So the number could be very much higher, right? And then you have what Christopher Berry wrote or did a bunch of interviews in the early 90s with serial killers and serial rapists. And one of the things that he talked about was it was deselection, and Craig goes over deselection as well in his course. But it's basically, they said that if a woman had rough speech, they would automatically just like write her off. They didn't want to deal with her. So you're looking at like, and I think that percentage was around I want to say like 80%. It was really high. So those are 2 huge factors where it's like, well, wait a second, why are we doing one of the things I go over in these things is, I'm in an MMA gym all the time, and these boys that are in this MMA gym, they're in peak physical condition and they're in their early 20s, making just like terrible decisions with their life. I love it to death. And, but they're go in and it's like they're there 6 days a week and they are doing the same combos over and over and over, the same ones. And they go and they get into the cage and it's equal initiative. Both people have decided, hey, we're going to go, beat each other up. And it is all they can do in the midst of that, all amped up to just string 2 combos together. And so it's like with women's self-defense, you go in and you look and it's like, what makes you think that a woman is going to remember, how to get out of a 4-point hair grab move? You know what I mean? Like, it's just not, that's not realistic at all. Okay. And so that was a big one, just addressing those things at first. And so that's like one of the things that, you said we'll go into knife control concepts later, but that is a huge part of it too, because I teach women how to move. I want them to get them to move, how to overcome these freeze responses, combat adrenaline responses, and things like that. So that's, yeah. And then also how to discern whether or not a person has good or ill intent much sooner than just being surprised. And yeah, so that was your question.
Absolutely. That was yes, that was perfect. I would like to know if you don't mind going over these steps of mucking and like also some visual cues that people can keep in mind when they're around others in a public space.
Okay.
That. Sorry. That
one of the best
way I said it.
No. Let me put these in a little bit tighter because one of the best ways that I don't want women to be paranoid. That's the biggest thing. Is like I don't walk around paranoid. Okay, but
right,
it is the way that I've heard it described, and I'm pretty sure it was Craig who probably said this, but it's you could do the whole like I think it's Colonel Cooper. He does the whole like you can be in red or you're in yellow and then you're in orange and you're in red and then you're in black, and it's kind of like to me. I feel like that's also along the lines of remembering all these. Oh, I got to be in yellow. Oh, I got to be in. And so I loved how Craig said, I'm pretty sure it's him. He said, you need to be walking around as if you're driving in the rain. And it was, you're paying attention to the other drivers. You're just a little bit more cautious and paying more attention and stuff like that. And that's how you should be, And so I loved that. Like, I think that's the best way to describe how you need to be, maneuvering in public. And then I teach what's called, it's ask, tell, yell. So when a person is approaching me in a parking lot, my playlist is, hey, can you hold up a second? Which is pretty funny. And I think that is Craig's. I'm sure it is. But I can't find anything else I'm going to say because that's how I learned it. So I'm like, all right, hey, can you hold up a second? So it'll be, we're going to use a little bit of foul language here, right? So, hey, can you hold up a second? I said, stop, back the fuck up, and going back and, you can bring it back down, but basically if the person doesn't stop, hey, can you hold up a second? Ironically, this is what's really funny about that. I had a lady in Florida that was like, what does that even mean? And I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, what does, hey, hold up a second mean? And I was like, oh, it just means like, can you stop right there or something like that? Because, I'm trying to get them to create their own playlist, right?
Right.
And so that was really funny because I was like, oh, maybe somebody doesn't understand what I'm even saying. It's like, right. So,
interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. I was like, I guess there's like, but yeah, so it's like, hey, can you hold up a second? Hopefully they'll stop. A person with good intent is probably gonna be like, oh, okay, yeah. And then, but if they keep coming forward, I said stop, and then if they keep coming forward, then it's back the fuck up, and then you're back down, and doing what you can. So that's the gist of a muck playlist, I guess, right there.
For those that attend your course and go over the mucking portion with you, but kind of want to bridge the gap between verbal commands and physical defense, what would you suggest to them as far as martial arts training?
Definitely Jiu-Jitsu. That is a big one, I'm going to say, no matter what. Because what happened is I remember always being told, oh, it's never going to go to the ground in karate. And like I'm 5'7". I'm 125 pounds. It always goes to the ground. Like size matters. It's one of the best things. So I ended up, by the way, I was going to say that in the midst of all that like training, I kind of like dove in for the last 2 years, and I have like 250 hours in like pistol and knife combatives and other stuff like that. But also ended up training with Fit to Fight for a month. They're a Krav Maga basically organization out of Charlotte. And Ryan Hoover runs this joint, and like I'm telling you, like what he has to say is just phenomenal. Like it's kind of funny because like I remember like everybody would like he has that shirt that says Ryan Hoover is like painfully unlikable, and like my kids like went and like trained with him and everything like that. And I remember like laughing about the shirt. And my daughter Lila, who was like 12 at the time, she was like, "Why do people think he's unlikable? He's so nice." And I was like, "Oh." But
so
one of the things I love about him is that he talks about how size matters. And that's the biggest thing is like, it really does. Like, it doesn't take my technique can be like flawless, and I'm still gonna, I can still be bicep curled and then just, swept and then thrown on the ground. So I'm on the ground. Like, that's where I'm usually, if I'm in a clinch, I'm pretty much with a larger person going to the ground. So you need to know how to maneuver it. And so I would always recommend Jiu-Jitsu first. And then also, that's one of the things that I love about like Fit to Fight is they do Krav Maga, right? But then they also have like all the groundwork and stuff is there in their all their facilities and stuff like that. So it's a very all encompassing sort of deal, and it's really neat. But yeah, and then like Krav Maga or some sort of striking. But yeah, definitely grappling for sure. So.
Absolutely. I love asking this question because I feel like all of the people who are high up in training, they always say the same things. Like, that's definitely what, Craig Douglas said and Aaron Jannetti, Eli Knight, like hearing that repeated through all of you is very validating because I get that question a lot from women. Ryan is actually coming on next week to record.
Yay!
Of course, we record episodes. I know, I'm so excited. We record episodes super early on just because all of the editing takes forever. So I haven't truly announced that on Instagram or anything, but if you're listening, you get a little bit of an inside scoop, as you all know by now. So that's so exciting. We'll definitely have to talk about that. And please feel free, even though he's coming on, it doesn't mean you can't talk about him. So that's so wonderful. It's almost like this inner circle of like experts. It's so cool. I don't know. Like, and it's this world that I didn't know about until. No, go for it.
Yeah, they all connect. That's what's so crazy is once you start like diving on in there, it's like, it was just crazy. Like, and I'll tell you, like what Ryan Hoover has, like what he's done is amazing. Like, and Amber Stalinsky is, his partner and everything like that. And I mean, what they're doing, like they're actually, in terms of women, that's what blew my mind is like, I was at an EWO, an Edge Weapons Overview course that they had hosted of Craig's. And I walked in there and I was like, oh gosh, there's women in here. And then they could fight. That was the other part too. And it wasn't like, oh, it's just like, no, they were actually like full-fledged, like he's testing, he's making sure these are women. And it wasn't just like this uncomfortable thing either. It was uncomfortable. Like it's fighting.
Right, of course.
But what he has is he saw a need and he met it in terms of like, he wasn't interested in raising the next fighter. He wasn't interested in doing MMA. He was interested in taking the people that needed it most and teaching them how to fight and teaching them to be safer. And that was truly an impressive. He's got such a neat group over there with Riley and Anya and Morgan and Adolfo and and Amber. I mean, it's just really, it's truly like incredible. But yeah, they all connect. Like I know who to go to ask to be like, hey, I'm going to go check this out. You should, So.
Exactly. It's nice when things come together for sure. They are both coming on the podcast, actually. I definitely meant to add that. So Ryan and Amber are coming on. So I'm excited to get them both on there. It's the second time we're going to have two people on the show. John and Sarah Hopman from Filster just came on. So their episode is being posted next week. And that's supposed to be the second time we have 2 people on the show. It's actually a lot of fun. I was thinking it'd be a little more chaotic just because of microphone and audio issues, but it worked out really well. Everything flows really nicely either way. So I'm so excited for all of that to come out. It's so exciting. So I'd like to talk a little bit about knife defense. This is an area that I definitely don't feel comfortable teaching people in. If people write me, I just direct them to KCC and you. And so far I haven't gotten a lot of knife questions, but when I do, they stick out to me because I always feel so bad at that I don't know enough. So I'm really excited to have this episode to direct people to. What would you say to people that want to carry a knife as part of their everyday carry, like weapons collection? What kind of training do you recommend that they do?
Well, first of all, find one that you're going to wear. That's a big one. And that you're always going to wear, like that, and then train with it. Like, know what you've got. I will tell you, so I find that this is going to sound, the reason I like knives so much and is because I find more women are more comfortable carrying one. And I hear this all the time in my classes when I go and I'm saying, hey, you've taken this course, so now we can do this knife course. And they're all like, yeah, that's exactly what. And I'm like, okay, do you carry a knife? And they'll be like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, where is it? And they're like, oh, it's in my purse. And I'm like, you're not going to be able to pull that under, stress. But a lot more times women have kids around, and just the idea of a knife seems a lot, I think, safer. But then there's also the whole concept of, do you know what it feels like to actually stab somebody or something like that? I have a friend that has a very unique job, and I remember him telling me he was surprised at how easy it was to stab somebody in the head. And I was like, it's super weird. But yeah, I was like, that's wild. So I carry a Fox folder knife. That's my favorite. I keep getting away from it. And the close second that I come to is the Shivworks El Nino push knife. But yeah, those are 2 that I will carry on my waistband. I don't carry them in my pockets usually. And then on a thigh band, and I practice both, drawing and doing what I need to do. Libre knife fighting, they are a pretty neat place. Scott Babb's pretty awesome to follow, so I do a lot of things with his things, and then obviously knife control concepts. What's really cool about knife control concepts is I was there when they were doing that Edge Weapons overview thing that I met Craig, and that's where I met Ryan Huber and his whole crew. Aaron and Eli were working on knife control concepts, and we're tossing it around with Craig at that course. And so what was really funny is I remember on breaks, they were wrestling around and screwing around, and I remember I'm so damn tired. I don't know how you're even wanting to learn right now. All I want is to drink. But yeah, that was the baby of KCC. So that was really neat. Later on, because when Aaron asked me, he was just hey, do you want to come and do this instructor's program? And I was just sure, whatever, let's do it. And yeah, so that was was kind of the beginning, and so that was super cool. And yeah, that program in itself, what he's doing with KCC is just that's something else. That connected so many dots in all of my combative stuff just together. So
will you go into a little bit more detail on how KCC connected the dots for you and what those dots were when it comes to knife fighting?
Absolutely. So it wasn't even just knife fighting. That's the other part too, is just any weapon. What was really cool about that program is that it's kind of how I kind of developed a little bit more into my course is it's based off of movement. So you are not just learning moves of the expectation is that you've already kind of know a little bit of disarmaments and things like this. This is the gray area, right? But what's really neat about that is everybody gets kind of stuck in the gray area. It's what do you do? And so this is about following the movement of the person that has the weapon, right? And so, for instance, you already have you've stopped the knife, right? Well, they're trying to, depending on what stabbing motion they're doing, are they sewing machining? Are they doing this? Whatever it is, it's all about following their movement and just moving around that person. Consequently, how that ties over into my course is um, just moving in general, like just keep going. Like that's the biggest thing. But when I found out, like later, it tied over into when I was doing ECQC again, and it tied over when I was doing, I took a rogue methods and fieldcraft survival courses, and like it was just like things just clicked because I'm not trying to fight this person. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to trace their weapon, and then eventually get it away from them. That's the ultimate goal, and then shoot them with it.
Right.
Not get stabbed. But it was amazing, right, exactly. Because it was a night and day difference in what this course does. Like it just, because you're doing reps, you're doing a flow, and you're just going with, you don't know what this person's doing. You're just following what they're doing and like, avoiding the pointy end, basically.
Right. Absolutely. And what all content do you teach? So for someone who's wanting to take your course and wondering what weapons content you teach, what would you tell them?
So if they've taken the 3-hour Muay course, I do one that's called Offensive People Opener. And it's very basic. I go over what knives, what are good knives that you're actually going to carry, how to carry them. And it's basically like pulling under pressure. So we've already gone through everything. We worked our way into a clinch. And now we need to be able to draw the knife. And I had a guy be like, one time, I was just like, hey, is any of your stuff based in like Kali? Or I was like, I think everything is, but whatever. Or Filipino martial arts. It's like the grand. No, it's not that. We're not that intense. Less. No, but it is basically like I've worked up framework and stuff. So how are we framing up? How are we drawing our knife? Where are we stabbing? Like I'm not going to get too technical on like, well, this is the liver, and this is you should stab them right here in the kidneys, and this will go directly through the spine and paralyze them. Like we're not even getting that far. Like just being able to the psychology behind it, what it feels like. So if you follow Adam Boyce, he's with Spartan Mode on Instagram. He does a lot of stuff where he takes like a pork shoulder and then he'll wrap it or put dowels in it or something like that. And then he wraps it with, I think it's like 32 layers of saran wrap. And so that's what I'll do is like, just to give people a feel of what it feels like to actually stab, what it feels like. It's surprisingly easy. So that's kind of neat. Good to know. And then I'll let them like try with like different knives and stuff like that. But yeah, it's basically like being able to pull under pressure. Where are they going? Framing, and then just doing it like actually, kind of getting amped up. What's really interesting that a lot of people don't, and I think this is where a lot of self-defense, and I hate to say like men because I have a lot of really awesome men that have like like that are amazing at teaching that, obviously, but sometimes the boat is missed because they don't quite understand just how scary it is to just step in and do this. Like, I will be teaching like a power slap or an eye strike or something like that. And like, I have women and they'll be in my line and their hands are shaking. Like it is a scary thing. And so there has to be a lot of like, of maneuvering trauma. I do a debrief. That's something I learned from Aaron at the end of each class. And there's a lot of stories that come out and a lot of heartbreaking things, a lot of tears. There's always tears. And just things where it's like women have just what they've overcome just by like showing up. And so I don't actually know where I was going with that, but we were talking about the knife course.
No, I love it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about what you teach in your course. So that was on point. No, that's good to know. Unfortunately, I don't know a single woman that comes from a pure background of, being treated just correctly their whole lives. They've had some type of run-in with, verbal, physical, sexual assault. And that's usually why they end up contacting me. And I've not taught a self-defense course directly other than being like a, cardio kickboxing instructor, but I do have people open up to me, and every single time it reminds me of what I do. So that's absolutely relevant. Thank you for sharing that. Do you notice a difference in your students from like the beginning of class to the end?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Because I'll ask, like, one of the things I do believe, like, as a good instructor needs to be asking for feedback, and they need to know what they're screwing up. Like, so I will always ask, like, I want to know. And even if they don't, to say it in front of class, like, please come tell me later. Like, I think Aaron, one of the things I loved about his is that he's very much like, he had said, like, as a good instructor, your classes should not look the same. They should be continually improving, and you should continually be seeking more people to learn under, and things like that. And so, what was the question?
Do you see a difference between your students when they enter your class versus when they leave?
Yes. There is. Well, what's really cool about that is, like I said, it's really hard for some. Like, there's a lot of women that come in and they don't want to be there, and they've literally pushed themselves to just walk in that door. And it is an absolute, like, honor to be able to teach them, because I'm just like, I know, like, that was their metaphorical cage. Like, that's them stepping in as if they were, like, getting into an MMA, ring and just going to town. Like, that's a huge step. It's really, really, really friggin' hard. And I feel like a lot of times the credit's not given to just how hard it is for these women to take that step, and to feel just completely helpless, but want to just put themselves out there. My stepmother-in-law, she's my ex-stepmother-in-law, but she's still my
right.
One of the things that's really cool about her is, like, she called me one day, and, like, she was the last person in the world that I would have ever thought. She called me and she asked me about jiu-jitsu, and I was like, she was probably one of the last people in the world that I ever would have thought would have ever wanted. And I was like, this is, like, the wrong martial art for you. But, I told her about it, and I was like, I think you should do it. Of course, I'm going to promote it. It's great. I didn't think that she would. And she did. And she is killing it. She's in, like, Greenwood, Arkansas. Now she's like, I mean, it's amazing. Like, but I mean, she was one of those people that was very timid to go in and do it. And I'm like, so damn proud. Like, it's just,
it's amazing.
It's cool. She's taking the course that I'm teaching in Tulsa with Defensive Shooting Academy with Marshall Laton, and that's in Tulsa, not this weekend, but next weekend. And so she's taking that one. She's got her first pistol, and so she's going in, and we've done that. And so I'm really excited for her. But yeah, people don't give credit to what it takes to how hard that is, and I think that's one of the things that is I'm really impressed with a lot of men that I work with, because they will reach out to me and they'll be like, I want to make these women safer, but they're kind of like, I can't get them to come. And it's because, so they recognize the deficit in their area. And that's what's so cool is I'm like, they're actually, trying like that. And as opposed to some of the others that I've dealt with, where it's just like, no, this is what I want to do. And I'm like, well, you're not getting butts in the seats. And you're scaring them off.
Right.
And so I'm very impressed by a ton of these men that I'm working with, because they recognize, okay, I have to view this from a different standpoint. And, but yeah, by the end of my class, like, it's neat because, I mean, there's always tears. And they're, it's usually like I'll hear stories and they'll be like, these are things I hadn't even thought about. And this is all before, you get into any sort of like, fighting or something like that. So it's pretty damn neat. Cool job.
Wonderful. It's kind of interesting, like, to learn the motivation behind why people come to your class, and like, also why they start looking into resources. Ideally it would be preventive, right? And they would want to learn these preventive measures so that they can prepare. But unfortunately, a lot of people train after something has happened to them. What would you say your goal is when it comes to like maybe bridging that gap? Like, do you have a goal when it comes to getting women to train more preventively than not?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have been, I mean, I know in the South, but women it's almost like we've been told like we have to be nice. And I want to be nice. Like I'm a smiling person. Like I love being sweet. Sometimes. But there is a big thing where one of the things that I tell women is like, just in general, where do these boundaries get started? I'm a 40-year-old. I just recently started dating again. Okay. I still feel like when I'm dating I am still in positions where I'm like, oh gosh, I tell this person to back up a little bit. Am I being crazy? Right. Oh, this person is really in my space. I was recently on a date with a person that was literally twice my size, and they kept moving their chair closer and closer and closer to me. And I was backed into a corner, and I was starting to feel a little bit more like, and it was like, I wanted to tell them to back up. But I mean, here I am. I literally teach this stuff, and it's still hard for me to tell that. One of the things I talk about too is like understanding that just because someone bought you a drink doesn't mean you have to sit around and listen to their crappy conversation. Like I didn't learn that until I was like 25. And so I'm like, and it's just like, but it's hard to be able to like, it is so hard to be able to just stand up and just leave, take that drink with you.
Absolutely.
You bought it. But it's weird I think the biggest thing is to be able to tell them you're not crazy for feeling that way. You're not crazy for if someone puts their hand on your shoulder just to be like, you're not, nobody should be. If you are uncomfortable, they don't need to be in your, don't need to be in your space. And you can tell them that. Because them getting fired up that's their problem. That's not your problem.
Absolutely.
I had a guy at a wedding one time, and like at that time I was married. And I have 9 kids. And so usually that's like, should be the biggest deterrent, and this guy, had put his hand on my shoulder, and I knocked it off, and I didn't even knock it off. It wasn't even rude. It was just kind of like, hey, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And this guy automatically was like, whoa, you're one of those girls. And I was like, you're one of those girls, the one that doesn't want your hands on me. Like, I don't know you. I said I was married. I said I had 9 kids, and so it's like, but it's still hard. It's so hard to say these things.
I love that we're talking about this. This was one of the major reasons the podcast was started. I don't think these things are discussed enough. I love that there's a lot of content being created right now about situational awareness and mucking. But when it comes to putting things in practice, I feel like there's a little bit of a gap. For someone who kind of wants to train mucking, boundary setting, maybe some movement from home, what would you recommend to them?
I know Craig has he basically has his muck course on Warrior Poet Society, so you can look that up, and he does that whole thing. It's really neat. I have my kids watch it. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of muck. Yeah, you could follow that, and that's a really great course to check out. But I mean, like, do you want to do like knives too? Is that what you?
Oh, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, for someone who's just listening to the podcast and, is now like having this realization that they probably need to practice saying no, because you absolutely do, like finding your voice, practicing movement, walking in a circle, as opposed to walking back and cornering yourself. I guess what I'm trying to ask is what would you tell them to do as their like first or second step into getting into that?
I think just practicing saying 2 phrases is the very first drills that I do. One is stop, you're making me uncomfortable. That's a big one that I teach for a lot of young girls. There is a grooming situation that is a big problem that a lot of people I don't think quite fully understand how it works. As foster care, I saw a lot of it. But being able to teach young girls that if they are in, just being able to say, you're making me uncomfortable, I don't want that door closed, to anyone that is an authority. that's a huge one of being able to say, like, keep that door open. And Larry Nassar, like, that's the one, may he rot in hell. That guy had power, and he had power over careers, and he had power and authority as a doctor. And I mean, he molested over and raped over 200 women, like young girls. It's a tragic story, and it was all about grooming. It was just he had everybody fooled. So for me, it's about like the boundary setting, keeping doors open, and so it's just to protect yourself, is to protect the other person as well. But and then the second thing, so stop, you're making me uncomfortable, is a big one. I tell teen girls, like, saying it loud and proud, like, if proud, but being able to say it, like, and then the word no is a big one. I'll tell young girls too, like, I always joke, because I'll be like, there's not one mama in here that if they heard the word stop, if they heard the phrase stop, you're making me uncomfortable, or they heard no coming from like their teen daughter, they're not gonna have, their head's gonna be on a swivel going, they're looking, they're going to come and take care. That's the reason they're there. And then the second one is a big one too, is sorry, I can't help you, is another one I use. And I've used that a lot on this last trip. And that's for like panhandlers and just people that are approaching you. It's just a big one of understanding, like, to be quite honest with you, a man does not need to be coming up and asking you for help. Let's just start there. And so the answer is, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And then moving on, like literally making the eye contact and then moving on. Practicing those two phrases are huge. And how you say it, and just and saying it in an assertive manner. Watch how you say it. Like, look in the mirror. Do you sound assertive when you say it? Yeah. So, is that what you want to hear?
No, I love that. Yes, absolutely. Even after, so I left ECQC, and about a month later, I had a friend contact me because she was dealing with an ex-partner who was stalking her. She actually had a restraining order against him at this point. So we actually worked on mucking because I wanted her to just understand, like, how to find her voice and create space before he's able to grab her, because that was one of the things he would do. He would close in the space and then grab her hair or something just easily grabbable. And that was even hard for me to teach, and even harder for her to do, especially coming from that trauma. So sorry if it feels like I'm harping on this topic, but I also feel like it's not discussed enough. And you are the best person to talk about that, especially coming from a woman's perspective. I think that's so important. So when it comes to weapons defense, if a woman were to approach you and say she's considering pepper spray, a knife, and a gun, what would you say to her about those weapons?
I would say whichever one she's going to do, and whichever one she feels comfortable with. Someone that's carrying a gun is, or just saying, oh, you should just always like conceal carry a pistol or something like that. I don't think that's not a one size fits all sort of thing. I mean, I backpack carry. I have a backpack with me all the time. I train to pull from my backpack. I also always have a knife on me. That's what I feel comfortable with. That's what I've trained in. So pepper spray, there's On Her Own. She's on Instagram. She does a really cool thing on, like, pepper spray and stuff like that. She has a class, like basically a course that you can like look up and into on, pepper spray and things like that. I don't carry pepper spray. Just not my thing. But that's what I'm saying, is that ultimately it has to be what you're comfortable with. I have kids. And there's a wealth of information out there now, like, who's the girl that does the concealed carry? I know that you talk about her.
Tessa with Armed and Styled.
Yes, Armed and Styled. She has a lot of really cool options out there. She's a tiny female, For me, one of the things that I've noticed in combatives, and this is just where I'm at, so this is where I'm comfortable, is I'm not seeing a lot of situations where, outside of an active shooter situation, even then, my ultimate goal in an active shooter situation is getting myself and my kids out. In all of these scenario work that I see when I'm doing any of these courses, is a lot of times when you get into like in-fight, and Craig calls it in-fight weapons access and stuff like that, I would say from all of the ones that I've recorded and I've watched is that when you are literally in a clinch and you're actually fighting and you're trying to draw your gun, I would say 65%, if not a little bit higher, have their own gun taken from them and used on them, or they can't draw it in the first place. So I look at that and I'm kind of like, okay, and there's a couple videos that are out right now that's really interesting. It was talking about like, being able to access your own weapons and stuff like that. So with a gun, there's, to me, I'm always looking at, yeah, you can fire that, but who's behind it? Are you really like making these decisions under pressure? Yeah, you could shoot the bad guy and all this stuff, but there's if there's tons of people around. So, I mean, and that's where I'm at is I prefer a knife for me. There's a lot of variables that can go wrong in that regard. Not saying that I am not a 100%, concealed carry supporter or anything like that. It's not like that. It's just that I do it differently. And that's what's comfortable for my purposes. So anything that I'm going to recommend for a woman is like what they're comfortable with. And that's ultimately it. So, and there's a lot of really good programs out there.
Absolutely.
So yeah, hope that like wasn't bad.
No, not at all. In fact, it's good I like getting a kind of a variety of answers when it comes to weapons carry, because I strongly believe in the idea that it's just as much of a right to not carry as it is to carry. Like, I never like try to make someone feel bad for choosing not to carry. So since you conceal a knife, what are some at-home drills you do to train your knife fighting?
I'll do a lot of framing, and then just being able to draw, like being able to draw one-handed, being able to draw with two, like obviously the onset of if I'm feeling super threatened, I think a lot of times a lot of people don't know the statistics, but usually there's almost, you never want to say it's always this, but it's almost always a two-person ambush. So when you look at the statistics on that, I'm a small person. So usually how I'm talking about, like when you've got your playlist rolling, right? It's like, can you hold up a second? And they keep encroaching. And then you're like, I said stop. By the time I'm saying they've taken a few steps, if I said stop and I've scanned and I'm looking in the area, at that point, I'm probably going to be drawing like my knife and I'll be like, here's where we're at, That being said, then there's, they could be rushing you or whatever it is. There's all sorts of things. So being able to just draw under pressure is a big one. So I'll usually, what's really interesting is I'll go like in Jiu-Jitsu gyms or something. I have my training knife. And I'll ask anybody, I'm like, hey, I want to see if I can draw from a clinch or I want to see. And that's the best part too, is I really like that, is because they know I'm drawing. They know where my knife is. They know what I'm trying to do. And I want to see if I can draw it and, stab them. So that's what I practice a lot at home. Anybody that's willing.
Right.
Let me stab you. So I will, like, in terms of like a knife recommendation, if I had to recommend a knife for any woman right now that hasn't like had a lot of training, I will tell you straight up that El Nino push dagger, and I have a story about that one, and that's why. Is I fangirled Craig, and I bought that knife, and I bought it, and I was like, I had not even played around with it at all. So I went to an ECQC. It was in Virginia, and I was put. So I had it on my left. I'm right-handed, and I had it on my left hand support side, and I had my during that evolution, I was going to have the sim gun, appendix carry right, but it wasn't my turn yet. And so I was teamed up with this guy who was, he was a former SEAL and super nice guy. Him and his wife were just amazing, like just sweet people. And they do private security and stuff like that. And so my thing was, it was his turn. It wasn't mine. And so I remember like walking up And I was like, in my head, like, this is all going on right when I'm like supposed to be coming up with a scene, you know, and I was just like, hey, baby, looking for a date. And I was trying to be basically like, you know, how close can I get to him? And then I was like, well, I've got this training knife. I've not played around with it. Let's see what happens, you know? And I was like, oh crap, it's left-handed. And I was like, well, let's just see what can happen, you know? And I was able to like pull this and like stab it a few times. And like later on, it was pretty funny because I have it on video because he was like, God, I lost track of how many times you stabbed me. I mean, he chucked me on the ground like hardcore. It was like, boom. Like, but I mean, it was just, and he totally shot me with my own gun later. Like in the middle of the scene. It was bad. It was so ugly, but I still stabbed him like a few times. But what was neat about that is it wasn't a testament to like my skill. It was not that. I mean, that was left-handed. Like it was a testament to how easy it was. Like I was like, oh, the knife, oh, it's here. You know, like it wasn't. And that's why I love that knife is because like I want to do anything that is going to eliminate variables for failure. And that knife eliminates a lot of variables for failure, especially if it's just like one you're just starting out with. And it lays pretty flat. I've carried it on my waistband. It has a clip that you could buy with it, so it's great for leggings. I've worn it on a thigh band and then practice with that and stuff like that. It's just an excellent, excellent knife. It also goes into the, you know, pork shoulder pretty well. So
amazing.
Yeah. Think of that knife.
Yeah, I feel like that was like the most holistic recommendation I think anyone's ever given me for something. I love that so much. So is that what you currently carry?
So I carry a fox knife. I go back and forth. It just depends. I like, okay. So I have right here. So this is a fox knife. And yeah, this is what I carry. It opens with wave right here. And so when you pull it and draw it down, it has a retention ring. I'm a huge fan of that. I've had a lot of people where they're like, I don't like retention rings because you can strip your finger. And I'm like, man, I've really like fooled around with like a training knife with this one several times. And ironically, what in the training knife, what doesn't get hurt is this finger. It's usually I've got like a huge scarring right here. It's because this gets ripped out of my hand like this way. So yeah, I'm a huge retention ring fan. So yeah, like those knives.
I would love for you to speak on the difference between folding knives that you have to pull out and then actually unfold, and the comparison between those and kind of like sheath knives or the one like you have where it kind of unfolds as you pull out, correct?
So with this knife, like there you have the wave, okay? So when you pull it out, it hooks onto your clothes and then it opens up this way, okay? That's why I like this knife. Also, if you pull it out and it doesn't deploy, you could also like hook it on your shirt. And that's super fun. This is also a karambit. So when you actually, it's kind of neat. We test it, you know, when we do this on like pork shoulder. I mean, it'll go into that pork shoulder, like just eat that really quick. Pretty damn deep. So I always just go back to this one, like, yeah. With Craig's knife, I don't have it on me. The El Nino, it's a push knife, so it's like a T, and so it fits in your fist like that. And so it's basically like I said, it's removing a ton of the variables for failure because when you pull it out of your clothes like this, it's already automatically just sliding it up yourself, and then it's in your fist right here. So then you can just kind of do what you need to do. So that one has a sheath on it, and so they also have, I think it's called defensive options is the clip that they have. But they have the clip that you can buy with it that hooks onto your leggings really well, or like a thigh band or something like that. And so, yeah, I mean, that knife is pretty amazing. So, yeah.
No, that's really cool. And does the technique change when it comes to, I know you mentioned pushing with the push dagger, that makes sense. So does the technique change with your, what is that knife called? I didn't get to type it out. The one that you currently
it's a fox
carry.
Knife.
Like FOX.
FOX, yep.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So does the technique change when it comes to like stabbing and defending with the push dagger as opposed to the fox knife, or is it not that different?
Yes. Yeah, no, it does, because
Okay.
like with the fox knife, you're carrying an ice pick grip. So, with
Right.
the obviously with the El Nino, it's right in your fist. And that's also why I like it,
Right.
is because I'm not so much, striking down so much as I'm just, sewing machining and like right in the face. The term is, basically dick face, dick face. Really what it is. You gotta get right down to
Gotcha.
it. Is what we're aiming for.
No, yeah, absolutely.
That's my plan,
Okay.
because it's not as elegant. That's the thing, is it's not as elegant. Everybody wants to sit here and think that it's like this huge, like elegant thing where we can be like, it's just like, oh, it's not. One of the things I loved about Craig's EWO course is that he was very big on get them off of you, keep them off of you. So how are you getting them off of you? If you're stuck in a clinch, okay, great. Well, we're going to be like, at this point, it is going to be like to, sewing machine face, sewing machine, wherever you're going, okay? That's getting them off of you, okay, great. But then you have to keep them off of you. And that's where you're going into more of the arcing motions, where it is more like, calling this one stuff, whatever you're going to be doing, however you're going to, someone's going to come light me up later. They're going to be like, oh, I've studied this for like 15 years. You're not right. I'll be like, it's fine.
No.
But that's what I'm ultimately saying. It's not elegant. It's not going to be pretty. You just need to be able, the most important thing, I don't care what if you can't access your weapon in the middle of a fight, then it's pointless. Like, I don't care how fancy you are. Like, I always tell the story of, I remember in one of the ECQCs, there was this guy that was like, I call him G.I. Joe. He's like literally the epitome of, he's like 6'4". Very, very attractive man. Literally looked like live action G.I. Joe doll. And he was like, he has a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. He's an MMA fighter. And then he went up against this guy who was like law enforcement officer of the year in St. Louis. So, he has a little bit of, crap under his belt too. And he looked like Captain America. And I remember like watching their like pistol, and they went at each other. And it was just like, I videoed their fight, at ECQC. And I mean, it was still ugly. It was extremely violent. It's two guys, very, very technical people. I think the other Captain America had, I think he was like probably a brown belt in BJJ too. And I mean, but the fight, like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, if you go and you pull up anything online, they're always ugly. It's always going to be this just nasty mess. And so it's like, yeah, we can all pretend. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you need to be able to access your weapon. You need to be able to use it. So that's really what I'm shooting for. And then maybe, like, we're going to aim. I mean,
absolutely.
It's like funny because with knives, it's very interesting because with, you always hear like bartenders and stuff, like when a knife is or like bouncers. And I remember my trainer, Aaron, was talking about when he used to bounce. It was like if there was a big bar fight, they would all, when it was over, they'd all like lift up their shirts to make sure nobody got stabbed. Because when you get stabbed in the gut, it's kind of like a slow, you don't really feel it. It feels like a punch sort of thing. And so for me, I'm looking at like, well, if I'm smaller, I want that to be over faster. I need them to be off of me, right? So psychologically,
right.
aiming for the face, if they see their cheek fall off, because you kind of got up in there, then perhaps they'll be like, oh gosh, like it's more or less my cheek's falling off. So yeah, that's why I say, face, neck, wherever you get right in there.
I've noticed on your Instagram, you use a bob and a training knife. How similar is that feeling of using the bob? And for those of you that don't know, a bob is like a punching bag that's shaped like a person. So it has like more similarities to actually fighting a person than, like a sack filled with sand. How similar is that to when you trained with a real knife and like the meat wrapped in saran wrap?
Oh, it's not the same at all. Bob is like second option when I can't get somebody to like come be my like fighting dummy. But I do like it because I'm using Bob to test out, like just practicing the draw. first of all. But so I'm using that because he's like, yeah, I know you always get the haters online. I got a lot of those. It's like, way to attack a defenseless man with no arms. And I'm like, thanks. I'm literally just I know. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Super sweet. Thank you, dude.
More than they will ever do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck off.
But it is funny because like I even did one in heels, and it was about like I'd gotten a new knife and I was testing out like just how to draw it, and like, people are interested in that. So I don't have a problem posting like failures. Like I want to post failures on there. You need to see that I'm screwing this up because it is hard. Like, and you're not going to just automatically like pull out a brand new knife and be able to, and honestly, like Adolfo, he's with Fit to Fight, wealth of information on blades as well. He was one of the ones that talked to me. I was screwing around with this knife it's a G10 knife. And so it's like, kind of that fiberglassy, plasticky, I don't even know. I'm sure there's some sort of fun scientific chemical compound that it's made out of. Basically, it's not metal. That's all I know. But I was testing that out, and Yes, yeah. So Revenant Core on Instagram, he made me a custom one, and it's called a Strike.
Oh, nice.
And so I was testing out that knife, and then Adolfo was the one that had suggested, and he was just like, why don't you turn it upside down for that? Which changed how I carry, because I would have to, so I haven't quite done the video where I'm screwing around with it, turning it upside down, because it will stay in the sheath. So anyway, yeah, practicing on Bob, unless I can get somebody else where I'm like, hey, will you let me kind of stop you a little bit? Nate with Black. Recently, Nate with Black Wolf Academy at Portland, Oregon, he let me screw around with him because I did something on chokeholds, because I've been sent like so many videos recently of like, do you think this would work? And I'm like, no, I don't. And that's the other part too, is just the reality of stuff. And Nate was very good too, where I was like, look, I need you to be mean to me. I need you to put me in a chokehold, pin me up against a wall, and I want to see how it feels. Because none of that stuff that you see, you have to address the fact that you're going to be, seeing stars at 2 seconds first. And so he was great. He was awesome. So like, love him. Like when I go back to Portland in March, like I got plans. I'm going to have him like try to beat me up.
That's awesome. No, that's great. Awesome. I love that. I love how much training you have and the variety of training. I feel like it helps you kind of like sift through all the bullshit and get down to what works. And I'm really excited to take one of your classes one day to see kind of what you teach from your experience in all of these various classes. I guess the last like kind of topic I want to hit on with you is like what you recommend women kind of like practice for situational awareness. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about on the podcast today that you don't feel you talked about enough or anything like that?
I will tell you at the end of the day, my ultimate goal every time I teach a course is to get women interested in training of something. I don't care what it is. Like if it's firearms, if it's knives, if it's just go do something. Like I will consider it a win if one woman walks away from my class and decides that they're going to go and just continue to keep moving forward with it. And just recognizing that. So there's a wealth of information out there, and there's a lot of people. I post on my Facebook or on my website. There's a list of people that I have trained with that I consider safe people that are all over the United States. So people that I've like personally trained with, and I'm like, I really like what they're doing and their message and stuff like that. Just so that they know this is a safe place, like, because it is intimidating to walk into. It's still intimidating for me to like walk into a new place. Like I'll go to EWO here in South Carolina here in November, and I'm going to walk in and be like, and I'll probably laugh and giggle because that's natural while I walk in and be like, woo, and really I'm just nervous as hell. So, because that's normal.
Right. Absolutely. It's absolutely normal. Thank you for your vulnerability with that. I definitely feel the same way. I have less experience, but I definitely have enough to where I feel like anyone from the outside would think I'd be okay walking into a new place. And I think it's kind of funny. When I was filling that ECQC, I walked across the room and sat by you for the first time. So that's kind of funny. And for those of you listening, someone is kind when they like have no idea who you are and they just treat you with like the utmost kindness. At ECQC, I got super sick and I ran out to my car. And I was crying because I was so embarrassed. All of my things were inside and we were out in the middle of nowhere. And I was on the phone with my paramedic fiance, like asking him what I should do. And then I hear, "Hello, are you okay?" And Christun just popped her head around the side of the warehouse. And it was like pitch black outside. And she came and checked on me. And then she went inside and got my bag for me so that I didn't have to walk into a room of Leos and like badass people, including yourself, to get my bag. And then, I left that night and I just felt so much better knowing I had someone there that was already advocating for me just as a person. So that just it says so much about you. And I've never been able to get that out of my head. Like, I think that it just says so much about you. I don't know how to better say that. So
Thank you.
For those of you that absolutely, for those that want to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram, healthy.buffalo. And then I think there's some sort of link tree out there that just now recently got created. I don't really know. I'm not really tech savvy, as this whole podcast is definitely alluding to. So.
We've had to restart like 5 times for those of you that don't know.
Yeah. So there's a link tree, and then I have healthy-buffalo.com. So I have like funny apparel. I don't take myself very seriously. That's the funny thing. So I have like t-shirts and stuff out there. I remember going into a course one time and it was like everybody was tactical out wearing black and like nobody smiled. And I remember being like, man, we're here like learning about like this tool that is specifically meant to kill things. And you got to lighten up. Like, and so after that, I was kind of like done with all the gear bunny stuff. I was kind of like, no, I'm going to make my own stuff. So like, I have a t-shirt. This is tactical-ish Barbie on there. I always wear, like, I have a tie-dyed hat now. This is my Healthy Buffalo stuff on there. There's rash guards. Just funny, like, little phrases and things that I think are, it's more or less basically an art outlet. Like, ironically, I was an art major in college, and now I do this.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Weird.
Cool. Okay.
So it's more or less an outlet for me, basically, is what it is. But anyway, yeah, it's entertaining and it's fun. So yeah.
Yes, your clothing line is amazing. I will definitely tag it in the show notes for those of you that need new gear to train in. I absolutely love it. There's another one on there that I absolutely love. It had to do with like kindness. What did it say? Like, I feel like I should have this pulled up while we're talking about it. Something about being kind, but
I don't know.
What is it? Oh, I don't know. I should know this.
No, it's all right. I don't know either. I'm scared to look it up because I'm scared my connection will fuck up.
Oh, okay, yeah, let's not do that. That's a good idea, actually. I will tag your clothing brand, your website, all of that with the show notes. I had such a good time talking to you today. Thank you for your patience with all of the technology issues. Yeah.
Probably me, user error here.
No, this is probably like the hardest it's been to record an episode before, so I appreciate you sticking with me. Before we sign off, is there anything else you want to kind of say to the listeners? Send off? No, I love what you said earlier, but is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to say just keep moving forward. Like for any women, like it might seem like you've like hit a plateau or you're scared to just walk it. Just keep going. That's the biggest thing. Like let's keep moving forward.
I love that. Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Christun. I'm going to do our little sign off and then we'll talk at the end afterwards.
Okay, cool.
So for exclusive video content with guest speakers, you can become a Patreon. You'll receive a thank you note and podcast stickers and, of course, more exclusive content. Visit SheShield on Instagram and TikTok for show updates, pictures of our guest speakers, and podcast highlights. A special Sorry. A special thank you to Sagetta Gear, the official sponsor of SheShield. For concealed carry gear, duty gear, you could use code SheShield10, SHESHIELD, the number 10, for 10% off your Sagetta Gear order and to support the pod. All sources mentioned in this episode will be in the show notes, which are the notes below the title. If you like the pod, you can help by liking, subscribing, and leaving a review. Thank you for listening, and in the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant. Bye!